Hello, and welcome to episode 161 of Dark and Stormy Book Club. Today we have a visit with Ed Aymar, who wrote a book called They're Gone, and he wrote that under the pseudonym of E.A. Bars. Enjoy. I'm Ann Dart.
I'm Tracy Stormy.
And I'm Kathy Knight.
And together we are
It was a Dark and Stormy Book Club.
A podcast for mystery lovers.
Welcome. If you enjoy our show, please consider contributing to the Dark and Stormy Patreon. By becoming a patron, you will help us create better and quality content. There are also benefits to becoming a patron, such as exclusive content and Dark and Stormy merchandise. Become a supporter at patreon.com/darkandstormybc. Check our website for the link. We appreciate any and all contributions. Thank you.
Before we start with our interview, we thought we'd take this opportunity to celebrate something special. This is our 3-year podiversary.
Yay! Who would have ever thunk it?
Yes, I can't believe it's been 3 years. It feels like 20.
62.
Yeah.
It's been a learning experience from day one. We're still learning.
So true.
But for the most part, it's been an absolute joy to get to know these authors. Would be interviewing people like Alan Bradley and
Anne Perry or Laura Lippman or Reese Bowen. We've got some big names on our list.
yes, but then we've also had the opportunity to get to know authors who have not made it yet, or at least not to that status. And it's so great to see their journey.
There's just so much talent out there. We can't reach them all, but we're trying.
The podcast has definitely evolved over these 3 years. When we started out, it was just Anne and myself, and then we were lucky enough to snag Kathy and get her to come on along this craziness. We've also added trivia to our lineup, new and noteworthies, a lot more roundups.
And now Kathy has run away from us.
No, Kathy didn't run away.
Pursuing other interests at the moment.
She's getting educated.
Yes, I decided to go back to school after 35 years.
And good for her. We're very proud of her.
Better late than never.
And
Yep.
we're hoping every once in a while she can still find the time to join us.
Yes, I will definitely be dropping in from time to time.
And she will be more than welcome. So I hope you stick with us for another
3 years.
We'll at least try to commit to that.
Like we've said, things have evolved over time. If you have any suggestions for us, please reach out. We love hearing from people, and we can always find room for improvement.
If you know of an author you would like to see featured on our show, let us know. Send us a note at darkandstormybookclub@gmail.com.
Well, ladies, let me raise my glass, my virtual glass. Here's to 3 more wonderful years with you lovely ladies.
Right back at you. Cheers to 3 more.
Exactly. Blink. They're Gone. It's a thriller by E.A. Bars. It is put out by Crooked Lane Books. 2 women's husbands are murdered on the same night in the same way, and their investigation uncovers a terrifying connection. 2 men from vastly different backgrounds are murdered, one after the other, on the same night, in the same fashion, with 2 bullet wounds, one in the head, one in the heart. The 2 slayings send their wives on a desperate search for answers and a desperate attempt to save their families' lives. Grief takes a heavy toll on Northern Virginia freelance editor Deb Linh Thomas. when she learns of her husband's murder, and utter dismay sets in when just a few weeks after the funeral, she discovers that he had been the subject of an FBI investigation after withdrawing a large sum of money from their shared accounts. Elsewhere, Baltimore bartender Cessy Castillo is less bereft when her abusive husband, ex-cop Hector Ramirez, is killed. But it turns out he was deep in hock, and now Cessy's expected to pay up. Deb and the FBI agent assigned to her case start digging into her husband's murder and learn that he had become the target of criminals. As Deb and Cessy join forces to learn the truth, their investigation reveals an ever darker web of clues. But if they're not careful, they just may end up like their husband. Ed Aymar is an Anthony Award-nominated author. In 2019, he wrote a thriller called The Unrepentant, which received critical enthusiasm. He writes a column, Decisions and Revisions, monthly in the Washington Independent Review of Books. He's a former member of the National Board of the International Thriller Writers, and for years was the managing editor of The Thrill Begins, an online resource for debut and aspiring writers. He is also an active member of Crime Writers of Color, the Mystery Writers of America, and Sisters in Crime. He also runs the Noir at the Bar series for Washington, D.C. He was born in Panama and now lives and writes in and generally about the D.C., Maryland, and Virginia triangle. We would like to welcome Ed Aymar to the program. He has a fascinating book called They're Gone, which he has written under the pseudonym of E.A. Bars. Welcome, Ed.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to talk with you today.
They're Gone is a terrific thriller with lots of twists and turns for the reader. How did you come up with this really fantastic story?
Thank you so much for saying that. It makes this interview so much easier than if you'd started out with, I just hated this. The funny thing is, the story came to me when I was with a friend of mine, a writer named Susanna Calkins, who writes historical mysteries at Printers Row in Chicago. Susanna's new series takes place during Prohibition-era Chicago. She told me about an article she'd read that dealt with, I think it was Bloody Valentine, something like that, when Al Capone's men gunned down a number of his rivals.
Oh, yeah, the Valentine Day
Massacre. Valentine's
Right.
Day Massacre, that's it. She mentioned that one of the phrases that she'd read in the newspaper was a term used to describe the widows of those men called the bullet widows. And I thought that was such a fascinating turn of phrase. The whole idea for a story came to me right then of these women who were determined to find out what had happened to their husbands. I thought it was just a fantastic title. And then I wrote the book and the publisher promptly changed the title, which is fine. I am happy to defer to people in the industry when it comes to things like title and covers. But that's where it came from. I asked Susanna afterward, I'm going to use this title. Are you okay with that? I'm totally stealing it from you. And she was like, well, it's not mine. You're stealing it from some dead reporter. So go ahead. That's where it came from.
He can't come after you.
But I'm calling dibs on it if anybody listens and wants to use it for something else.
Oh, that's right.
The protagonists, Deb and Cessy, are very different women with different backstories. And then you have Kim, Maria, Nicole, Rebecca in the background of the story. Was it difficult to write in such diverse women's voices in the same book?
That's a great question. I'm very conscious of the discussion around representation and appropriation. And I'm also very conscious as a straight male writer, how straight male writers tend to write women, which is not well. So I really wanted to be attentive to that. One of the things is I'm very fortunate in that my early readers who read my writing before it goes out to my agent or editor or anyone else, and my agent and my editor are all very strong, very outspoken women who have no disregard when it comes to calling me out on my errors. I'm a fan of being edited. Anything that makes the book stronger. If you're in this business for a while, you get a thick skin. I have a thick enough skin to take withering edits because they're just trying to make the book stronger. The best note that I can get, though, in an early draft of a manuscript is a little scribbled note on the margin that says, I don't think I would do this. And when it comes to that kind of insight into a female character from a female editor, I just glue myself to that. As a writer and just as a person, something so insightful. That helps. I'm conscious of those characters, as I am when it comes to sentences or location, of getting something wrong. I really don't want to. I want to make sure that I've captured something that's authentic to me and also authentic to the character and authentic to the readers. You really hope you can stick all three.
I have to say, I absolutely loved the character of Cessy's brother, Chris.
Oh.
He was obviously not a central character. I don't know. He just really appealed to me. He was obviously a psychopath or sociopath. He had humorous moments. I really enjoyed his portrayal.
Thank you so much. That really means a lot. I mean, it means a lot when somebody likes any character, but I liked Chris too. Mentioned the emotional moments. That was an emotional decision.
He really did not have a good future, so I guess
things weren't going to go well for him.
Yeah, so it was probably best. Is this novel based on any actual events, or did you just completely make it up?
No, this all happened to me last year. No.
Oh, wow.
That would be amazing. I would have led with that. No, it's all made up. There are some of the elements that did have truth to them. My novel prior to this one was a book called The Unrepentant, which came out in 2019. It really was an inside look into sex trafficking. I'd done a lot of research, and there's an element, not a very strong element, but there's an element of sex trafficking that runs through this. That's informed by my research. There's a chapter that describes the way they lived and worked and one of the woman's background. That all came directly from research.
Disconcerting to know, actually.
The fascinating thing, there's this cliche you hear a lot when it comes to tragedies, which is I didn't think it could happen here. One of the most jarring things for me to discover back when I was doing this initial research, I live in Northern Virginia. Northern Virginia is a hotbed for sex trafficking. I was talking to somebody in law enforcement. They were saying that a mall I used to work at in college is one of the places where they do a lot of undercover stings. I had no idea. I didn't realize it was something so prevalent in my own backyard. Not really my backyard, like a few miles away, but still.
Is it because it's DC?
There's a couple of theories on that. Some of it is because of the DC area. I don't want to say that this type of criminal activity is more prevalent in cities. You find it happening a lot in rural areas, especially places where, for example, there's new construction being built. And I know how this sounds, but in any place where there's going to be a lot of men, sex traffickers tend to target those places. So if there's military bases nearby, operations will be set up. Rural areas aren't immune from that, but just because of the amount of people here, the amount of traveling, the amount of ways to get into and out of this area, you tend to get a lot of concentration of that kind of illegal activity here.
I guess that makes sense.
Disarming to think about that and to realize the extent of it. In a way, it's sad but unsurprising, I suppose.
Yes.
This book is also about relationships and how bad things can get. Did you get emotional as you wrote this book?
I always find that as a writer, I have to cross a line within myself. I don't mean a line with gratuitous violence or sex. I have to do something that I'm not sure about because it's going to stick with me, and then I know that it's something that I need to put in the story. And there were moments where there was an incident or something I did with a character that jarred me. One of the things